Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into another exciting episode of Garden of Doom. And this week I have two people with us. One is a sometimes guest, sometimes co-host. What is she this week? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But she's been on before, both vampire shows and a host of other shows that I can't recall at this particular moment. But you've heard her before, C or C the Superior. Welcome back into the garden, C.
Hello, hello. It's an honor to be here, to discuss all things. Well, you haven't, told everyone what we're talking about, but I assume since they clicked on the link, they already know. So
yeah, I probably gave it away in the title. It has not been created yet. But our special guest, not that C isn't special enough, but our special guest is George O'Connor, and George is the brain behind, the art behind, the scripting behind, and I mean, unless you go to the original sources, the graphic novel series, The Olympians. My understanding is he's also working on the Asgardians, and Thor is going blockbusters. But George O'Connor, thank you so much for joining us, author of the 7-series graphic novels, The Olympians.
Oh, actually, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's actually 12 volumes now. It's currently wrapped. We did 12 for the 12 Olympians. I'm taking a little bit of a break.
Did I say 7?
Seven.
I'm ridiculous. It's one.
Hey, here's the thing. 7 rhymes with 11. 11's one less than 12. It all makes sense.
I know.
Perfect.
But 12 is so important with this whole thing. But yeah, so sorry about that. I botched, but I'm an old man, so that's what's going to happen. So George, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
So as you heard in the intro, my name is George O'Connor. I am the author and illustrator, or as I tend to call it, a cartoonist behind the Olympians and Asgardians graphic novels. They are graphic novels intended for all ages that basically retell classic mythology in comic book, graphic novel, whatever form you want to call that, sequential art. And what I'm doing with these, what I really strive to do is kind of put an emphasis on the characters. Each of the books is named after a specific deity, and I try to find really kind of the underpinnings of that character's personality, that deity's personality. And it's interesting as I explore myth, you find there is a lot of consistency you wouldn't expect over these stories that were crafted over literally thousands of years in different regions of the Mediterranean and elsewhere in the world. But there's certain elements of these characters' personalities that always ring true. And that's the bits of gold that I most treasure uncovering when I'm working on these books.
So there's a couple of background stories here, and both of you know at least one of them. So for C and I, for a while, we were both with a network called Unpopular Review. C probably still is. And they had Unpopular Review Wrestling, Unpopular Review Entertainment, and Unpopular Review Sports. And on Unpopular Review Entertainment, for a brief moment in time, C and I were doing a monthly show, and the third one was going to be on Hercules, which is the Romanized name for Heracles. We are going to focus on Heracles, but we'll ask George a little bit later on whether there's any major differences, because they're cognates, but not exactly identical. But for anybody who knows me very long, you know that sometimes I go to a network and sometimes I leave, and sometimes I'm asked to leave, and sometimes I sort of force the situation, so I'm asked to leave. Well, so Unpopular Review was one that I was on years ago. I left. They asked me to come back. I said yes, and then basically I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to stick around. And then they asked me to do one show. I said, nah, I'm good. But it was okay because like half of the group hated me anyway, which is, also par for the course. So that's the backstory with C. The backstory for George is that, do you know how I found you, George? Did I ever tell you?
No, I actually have no idea.
Okay, well, this is going to be a great compliment to you, because there's a podcast I listen to called The Ancients, and they were doing a series on the Olympians, and it's from real academia. And they had, I wish I wrote down her name, they had a woman who was a repeat guest talking about the Olympians. And when the host, Tristan something or other, said, where do you go to your sources? And she said, well, of course, I go to Hesiod and to Homer and to the plays. But I'll tell you, one that I really love going to is this graphic novel series by a guy named George O'Connor called The Olympians. I'm like, whoa, this academic is talking about graphic novels. This is cool. I got to check this out. So you got the seal of approval on this like Smarty Pants podcast called The Ancients by a Smarty Pants person.
I'm going to do a reverse shout out to Ancients because I am a listener to it. And that was a pretty cool experience when I heard, I think it was specifically they were covering Dionysus. And the question was like, which modern retellings of the Dionysus story do you especially like? And the woman who was the academic immediately cited my book. And I wish I'd heard it blind. My brother actually told me first. He listened first. He's like, oh my gosh, listen, you get a huge shout out. But yeah, it was delightful. Yeah, my fan base, I should say, like I write these books. It's either like middle grade kids or classics majors. That's like the core of the people who like these things. And there's so much overlap. I mean, every classics major is just a middle grade child at heart, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say I'm still a 15-year-old boy. So,
I'm like a 12-year-old. See, where do you come in on the?
I like to think of myself as the adult in the room. So.
I will just mention because this is you're clearly the youngest of like the three of us too, but you're the adult. I accept this.
Oh, thank you.
She's very mature. It's true. So yeah, that was really impressive. So I was really impressed that I could get a hold of you and that you ultimately said yes. So I think that was really cool. And and you say Dionysus, so we're not going to get into Dionysus today, but I'm like, is he really Jesus or isn't he Jesus? But we're going to put a pin in that and hold that for, maybe another day. Who knows? So
let's say for the episode to come back, Dionysus, party Jesus.
Party Jesus.
He's a Jesus who knows how to have a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a broad sweeping statement that's probably factually incorrect in a lot of ways is that as we get.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
As we get less gods, I think they incorporate the attributes of more gods into less characters.
Yeah.
Anyway, so today we were going to talk about Hercules. Remember, Heracles. Hercules is the Romanized. Yeah. Heracles is the Greek. Hera is the mom. Heraklion is the city in Crete. All of that good stuff. And we're going to try to make it through Hermes if possible. We're doing H&H. I don't know if we will be able to or not. We'll see how time goes. But George, why don't you tell us about Hercules? I was going to say a little bit about Hercules, but that's a lie. Tell us a lot about Hercules.
All right. So the thing with the Hercules, let's address. Let's address it because this is super important. So you mentioned about the idea just before about like less characters taking on the attributes of more gods. Like Heracles and Hercules, the same figure across different countries or different regions. He is like the hero par excellence. He is the local hero. That's why there's so very many myths about Heracles and Hercules. And basically every town that would have like a story of like this great hero, as they fell under the auspices of like the Olympian view, as like you wanted to map yourself onto the big gods from the big empires. Like your hero, who was maybe not originally Hercules or Heracles, would become Heracles. And so he's this very popular character all throughout the Mediterranean and elsewhere. The thing about the name, and it is so weird that we have this one specifically with Hercules, that is a Roman, for lack of a better term, corruption of Heracles. Heracles is Greek, and most people translate it as the glory of Hera. And so it's actually a kind of key part of his name, especially because the most familiar versions of his story have Hera as his main enemy. His father is Zeus. He is a demigod, although he's got a little bit extra oomph to him than the average demigod. And then his mother is the mortal princess Alcmene. And then Hera is very jealous of this and places many different plagues and things on him normally. And then there's the oddity of his name being named after Hera, the glory of Hera. I have theories about that, which I'll get into. As his fame spread, as he is clearly, and he's definitely the most popular hero of the Greek world and beyond, the Romans just kind of corrupted the name, where the name became less Heracles, it became Hercules. Just the thing is, the name just kind of changed just by like a game of telephone. And what's interesting about it is it's pretty common to read a book on Greek mythology, and every other god who has a Roman counterpart will receive their Greek name. You know, they'll call Jehovah or Jupiter, they'll call him Zeus, they'll call Juno Hera. But you'll often see that Hercules just sneaks in. And it's actually probably a testament to the fame Hercules has beyond just myths. I don't think there's a single person who speaks English, at least, who doesn't know who Hercules is. It's a term we still use widely. It's still the guy we think of as a strong guy, still a hero. There's still movies made all the time about Hercules. So there's something about this character that has gone beyond that. But for me, as a huge Hera fan, I always like to cast the light back on the original name of the glory of Hera.
I am wearing a Bobby Lashley shirt right now, and most of you who are normal have no idea who that is. But he's a professional wrestler, and I call him Black Hercules because he looks like Black Hercules. So you know, there is that, and there's been plenty of wrestlers actually with the name Hercules in their name. And of course, I remember growing up the Steve Reeves movies with Hercules, and of course Arnold Schwarzenegger with that very unfortunate movie Hercules in New York. And
that's an interesting one, all right.
It sure is. Now, my understanding of the name Heracles, glory to Hera, is that Zeus, as usual, knew that Hera was nonplussed, but he doesn't always really care. But he sort of tried to name the boy after her to sort of preempt her revenge.
That's one of the stories that people have come up with to kind of explain why. Okay. And and we do have the tendency to think of antiquity as shallow, where it was like there was this one idea instead of realizing like the stories that formed the corpus of Greek mythology formed over a very long time in many different regions. There wasn't like a central source for this knowledge. There wasn't a Bible. So these stories would kind of come out and they would not remember honestly where these names came from. The god Pan is an example of that, where they like kind of came up with a story where it's like Pan means everything because everyone loved him, but it actually meant something different originally. The gods themselves are already ancient by the time the ancients tried to figure this out. There's an interesting myth that I uncovered. So you can kind of figure out the age of various stories by when they first appear in written form, when they first appear in art, and a very early Heracles myth is the story where he is responsible in part for the creation of the Milky Way. Do the two of you know this one?
Yeah. Vaguely. It's something to do with Hera's breast milk.
Yeah, he's breastfeeding at Hera, and he's a strong little tyke, so it's very strong. And when he finally pulls away, there's a spray, and that goes across the heavens and creates the Milky Way. It's one of the more chronologically earlier stories that appears about Heracles, and you're like, well, that's interesting. So here's this guy. We know he's named after Hera. We know that this is a key moment. This is one of the reasons why Heracles has a level of physical prowess beyond most other, demigods. He got breastfed by the queen of the gods herself. So it's this very early thing. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. There's definitely a period in time earlier in antiquity where I think he was a hero of Hera, alongside someone like Jason, who is probably the most famous hero that Hera provides sponsorship. As time goes on, and if you look at the way like the actual worshipers, we tend to think of like pantheistic societies as like we worship all the gods equally, but you would have your favorites. You might belong to specific cults within stuff. The cult of Heracles is notable for becoming quite sexist. Probably because he extols so many of the masculine virtues. It's like, together with Hermes, for instance, he shares the role of god of gymnasiums, physical prowess and stuff. And so it becomes very sexist. Women are not allowed inside their temples. And I think it became a problem for them that one of the principal deities associated with him, literally the god who he works in the glory of, was the female god, like the female god, like Hera, the big one. So I think she kind of gets shifted as we have those stories where, like, everybody likes to say Hera is the bad one, but they kind of don't keep in mind that Zeus cheats on her thousands of times.
Yeah.
And that's also that whole idea of like how Heracles is the hero who absorbed 1,000 other heroes. The idea why Zeus has so many kids is the same reason. As the Olympian monoculture, we'll say, for lack of a better term, spreads out across the ancient world, and like this god of Zeus becomes ascended with his family, the Olympians, they'd encounter little populations where they're like, oh, we have a guy who's the son of a god too. Now, are you going to say your son is the god of like some minor deity? You're going to say he's the son of the big guy. So Zeus becomes this like philanderer figure. Because the only way it works is if Zeus has, thousands and thousands of partners who he can have children with.
Oh, I have a question, and it may seem a little wild, all right? So I'm going to.
Oh, I like it. We're going right with wild. Yes.
Well, I don't know. I have no idea, so that's why I wanted to ask. Let me preface it by saying Jesus, who is the Son of God, depending on your beliefs, it has come out, or it's been known that Jesus wasn't a real person, right? In history. So I was wondering, is Hercules a real person in history at all, or is he just a myth completely?
I would think he's probably a real person in the same way most people who, so there's some people who are definitely listening like, Jesus is real. I saw him on my, English muffin last night, but like most people are going to be like, there's probably a lot of real figures who are lost to the, ancient history that they're like, oh, that guy is the basis for Heracles. But I would imagine it was a conglomeration of people from all over. Like there's not with any authority. I don't think there's any one figure we can point to for really. For the most part, there are a lot of deified figures in Greek mythology. You can guess that it's probably some ancient king or some ancient important figure, but it goes back so far that I feel like we can't really know anymore. But I bet there was at least a couple people running around who are like, I'm the real Heracles, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
I'm actually not sure that it's been determined that Jesus was not a historical figure. I think there's still a division of belief on that. I know that there was, I assume it was a Heracles that was in the actual Olympics, like early on when they were like just regional Olympics. There was not the god or the demigod, but Hercules. We don't want to skip ahead, but
the stories that we associate with the semi-divine god, whatever you want to call him, Heracles, definitely predate the rites at Olympus that were celebrated. That was Olympic Games in celebration of Zeus. The earliest elements of Heracles predate that, and Hera also predates that. So it makes sense to me there'd be somebody named Heracles.
Sure.
Even if the hero himself wasn't being called Heracles, Hera certainly existed by then. So if you were like somebody who was like, say, from Argos, which was a place where Hera's worship was particularly strong, or like Sparta, maybe there was somebody who competed as the name, the glory of Hera. That makes total sense.
Well, Abraham, Jesus, Muhammad, and Moses are all popular names. So
exactly, yeah.
So nothing new under the sun, as they say. So my understanding is that there's 12 signs of the zodiac. There's 12 Olympians, although sometimes I think they rotate in and out as to who's the 12th. And there's 12 labors of Hercules. And when I listen to those who are in more the esoteric, secret mystery school knowledge, they say the 12 labors is Hercules making his way through the zodiac. And I tried to do a little exercise with that, and I could make some of them make sense, but I couldn't make all of them make sense. And I see you thinking, so you can put it in the back of your mind, and we'll try to think about it as we go on, because that is interesting. It numerically, it makes sense. I'm just not sure that it's accurate. But so here's my understanding of Heracles. I'm going to do this 100 times. Origin story.
Okay.
As you said, Zeus had sex with this princess. Hera not too pleased. Little Heracles was born. Hera sent some snakes in there to kill him. And as a baby, he found the snakes and put them in his hands and pulled their heads off or something, or was playing with the snakes and threw them around.
He effortlessly strangles them with his great god strength.
Exactly.
Also worth mentioning, he is a twin. He that happens a lot, where you have one twin who's kind of supercharged, who gets all the good god mojo, and then you have a twin that I guess just is like a schlub. It's probably like a twins, like the movie. So he was like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this Iphicles, his twin, was a poor little Danny DeVito, just being like, I sure am lucky my brother killed those snakes.
Right. So there's, but that's important because throughout there's sort of like the father and the semi brother, sort of, also being foils, and then switching sides and sort of being schemy against our hero as he's going through some of his tasks. And then, of course, there's a story where at some point, I guess, Zeus wins Hera over and she does, the breastfeeding thing. But Heracles' suckle is so strong that she has to recoil in pain, and the spouting out causes the milk.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens between that and him getting married. I don't know, Heracles as a young man, I don't know what happens then.
He beats his music teacher Linus to death with a lyre because he doesn't like the way he plays. That's a pretty fun early Heracles stories.
How old is he then?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Here's the thing. We should keep in mind all the stories we're mentioning. One of the things I do love about Greek mythology is, unlike something like where the biblical scriptures, where people have really codified it into being, even though there's plenty of contradictions in the Bible, even from, even just in the four evangelists' takes, there's different things that just don't match up exactly. Greek mythology, it's a mix or match. You could find all sorts of stories all over the place, and if you try to put every single thing in chronologically, it just doesn't work. Right. There's accounts where Heracles meets Perseus. Yet, if you look at Heracles' his parentage, Perseus and Andromeda are his grandparents on his mother's side. They weren't contemporary heroes. He's 2 generations before. If anything, Perseus was probably already dead by the time Heracles was born.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of stuff that, if you try to make that going back to the idea, all these different stories all over the place. Everybody who had a hero who was the big hero, he eventually became a Heracles. Because you wouldn't want, Perseus, he's great. He killed the Medusa. He had a lot of help. That's the thing I think is really funny. But he doesn't have a lot of feats beyond that. He kills the sea monster Cetus. He frees Andromeda. There's a few things he does, but he's not like Heracles, where it's just an endless well down. Heracles was the guy, unless you were in Athens and you're a Theseus person, but we're not even going to talk about those people because Theseus sucks. But Heracles was the guy everyone wanted to be. So he just gets more and more stories, to the point where it's like reading a superhero comic now. How do you make all the stories of Batman or Spider-Man make sense? You can't. You almost have to pick or choose.
Mm-hmm.
So you look like you had a question there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the whole brother situation. So I'm assuming that this brother is not also the son of Zeus.
No, it's a lot of times there's a thing that you see happen a lot in myths where the god will kind of take the form of the mortal lover of the woman. So in this case, with Amphicles, I forget her husband's name. It's also an Ampha though. Zeus took that form, and so the Greeks also had this idea there could be two fathers. So Iphicles is like the son of Amphicles' husband. Wow, I'm getting confused in this phrasing. And Zeus is the father of Heracles in there.
Okay.
Iphicles appears here and there. I think Iphicles is mentioned as being one of the Argonauts in at least some versions of that. His son Aeolus became very famous in the legendary Journeys of Hercules story TV show in the 90s. But Aeolus accompanies Heracles in some of his adventures. I think Iphicles is the one who lights the funeral pyre in some versions of the story when Heracles finally is overcome by the poison of the Hydra and needs to be just like put out of his misery. I think it's Iphicles who sets him aflame, but it might be Aeolus. I'm not sure.
There's probably different versions, like so many.
Exactly.
Myths.
So many different versions.
So here is my very rough understanding of our man Heracles as he's growing up. He's a bit full of himself, very rambunctious, gets into trouble because he doesn't know his own strength. At some point, he gets married, has children, and I think it's Hera. I might be wrong, but somebody gave him some poison. Oh no, I think it was a jilted lover or jilted goddess that he rejected, poisons him. And he kills his family and basically loses his mind. And then the 12 labors is sort of his, Gilgamesh going from being a big jerk to being a great hero, complete with the ending of, full apotheosis.
Yeah.
But is that more or less correctly stating?
I would say that's one of the more familiar versions. Yeah. Like for instance, that when I did my retelling of it, I've always found the murdering of his family to be distasteful for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the way it put the onus of that deed on Hera. I didn't think it was a good thing for him to have to work. And since it's not inherent in all the versions and tends to be a later addition to the story, I'm just going to leave that part out. He still put into the service of King Eurystheus, who was his, he was in line for a royal throne. That's something worth mentioning, Heracles. And through machinations normally ascribed to Hera or to her daughter Eileithyia, his birth is delayed, so his male cousin Eurystheus is born first and becomes the heir to the throne. And so then he's put into this layer of servitude to him, who Eurystheus is the mortal agent who sends Heracles out to complete his 12 labors, which his 12 labors take a very long time. Mm-hmm. Something I had a lot of fun when I did my book was you actually see him go from being like a young man in the early ones. By the time he's wrapping up later, like 12, he's got gray in his beard. He's got a bit of receded hairline. He's tired and worn down because he's mortal. There's the whole idea, which I think is a super fascinating aspect of him. I'd like to get into that in a second. Stick a pin in the idea where Heracles goes upon his apotheosis, because there's two really interesting conflicting sources, and the Greeks did some interesting mental gymnastics to come around from it. But Heracles spends his whole career basically doing these 12 labors, with many spots along the way where he's having other adventures. He's a chartered member of the Argonauts. He has he has his minor labors he does, and just all sorts of stories, like almost an endless amount of stories, his adventures he has.
Yeah, he's almost like the straw man hero for the entire history of, the Akkadians or the Achaeans, the Mycenaeans, and the Greeks, straight into the Roman era. It's like he's the sort of the constant. He's, after he finishes his labors in some versions, he invades Troy with the rest of them.
Yeah. He's actually in a weird way responsible for the Troy. He's actually a predecessor to Troy. He kills the entire Trojan royal family, with the exception of Priam, and puts him on the throne, and then he sets up the Trojan War. See, you had a question there.
I actually just wanted to comment on you leaving out the death of his family or the murder of his family, because I actually really like that, because when I heard it, the little that I knew of Hercules, I didn't feel like it was in his character. And keep in mind, I know
exactly.
I know about Hercules through the Disney films, through like the television show in the 90s. So it always felt odd to me when I heard about that story when I became an adult. Like, where did this even come from? So to know that it's not necessarily canon to all of his tellings is a nice thing to hear.
He has such a multiple choice existence that you can really pick and choose. And given the choice between putting in a thing that I think I even wrote in my book, Hera, where I talk extensively about Heracles, that's where he makes the most appearances. It's a situation that makes none of the parties involved look good. And just from a storytelling point of view, where my book's goal is to get to the bottom of the characters, it's like starting your characters off with a great deficit. Like label it like laboring them, for lack of, since we're talking his hair, with like a horrible deed. And there is always the doubt, like, did she put a madness on him, or is he just like, as you said earlier, like just a big cocksure ass? Wait, can I curse?
Yeah, you can curse.
Yeah, big cocksure asshole. Like, he there is like Greek heroes, they suffer from hubris, they do terrible things a lot. It's pretty hard to come back from the deficit and murdering your family, even if there is divine intervention to some degree. And like, also, that's not in keeping with Hera's character. When Hera gets deadly, she's creative about it. She's not just gonna make you go nuts and beat your family to death. She'll be like, hey, go ask Zeus to see what he really looks like. This is what she did to Semele, Dionysus' mom. And she was a mortal princess. And like, it turns out if you see a god's true form, you can't handle it. If you're immortal, you get burned to ash. She knows that. She kind of does it in a fun way, creates some stress for Zeus along the ways. Like, that's an episode we could do in the future, like the true form of Olympians. But there was something I said I wanted to stick a fork in. Oh, the divine nature of Heracles.
How do you know their true form? You're not Ash. You look like a person. I'm actually a pile of ashes with two eyes.
Turns out, if you get burned to ash and then just a gentle rain falls on you, you come back as like, I have some cohesion since that.
The secret of the Phoenix revealed.
It's just wet mud. So Heracles, his father is Zeus, his mother is immortal, not immortal. He has a little bit extra immortal blood because, as we said, Alcmene is descended from Perseus, who is also a son of Zeus. So if you're looking at a 50-50 split, Heracles is more than 50 gods. So he's already got that going for him. That in itself is not unique because Zeus got around.
What was his mother? Was his mother a priestess or an oracle or anything like that, or just a princess?
Just a princess. Yeah.
So his mother is the great grandchild of Zeus.
Wait, let's do the math. I don't think great grandchild. I think grandchild.
The grandchild of Zeus.
Yeah.
He had to have her, huh?
Yeah. It's pretty gross. Zeus is like, there's something I like about you. I don't know what it quite is. Like, oh. I look at you and I see something that just reminds me of someone I really like. So he's got the extra Zeus in him, and the breast sucking thing that we opened up with, the Milky Way thing, also supercharges him.
Yeah, never eliminate the breast sucking. Very important.
So he's jacked, right? And he got this power camp. He has all his grand adventures, and then he famously, the jilted lover situation comes in. On his second labor, he kills the Lernaean Hydra, which is, the multi-heads, has a poison that's so virulent that there's no escaping from it. He's given a little vial. He has a little vial that he dips his arrows in. He uses that to kill the Stymphalian birds, which is one of his later things that he does. And this is something that's known. He's got this super duper poison. He can reuse these arrows over and over again. It's so bad, a scratch from this brings you painful death. And he has a lover who, the way the story is normally told, it's not just that she feels jilted, she is jilted. He's just like, there's always, someone new. It's like, he is the number one hero. There's people throwing himself at him all the time. And it's often a centaur that kind of introduces the idea, which they kind of messed around with a little bit in the Disney Hercules movie. But basically this guy carries her off. Heracles shoots him with one of these arrows, these rejuvenating arrows that are always poisonous. And this guy gives a vial of his blood to her and says, like, you're going to need this one day because he's going to cheat on you. And what this is, he doesn't say it's poison. He says, this is a love potion.
Right.
Centaurs, we got magical blood. If you put this on his shirt, he'll just put it on him and he'll be in love with you as much as he was the first day he laid eyes upon you. So some time passes. Heracles, is acting like his dad Zeus, and she puts it on his shirt, and when he places it on him, he feels like he's burning. It's agony. It goes on for so long that the only way he could find any solace is he asks either Aeolus or his brother Iphicles or whomever in the version of the story to he's going to climb upon a funeral pyre to light him alive, and he will burn and be apotheosis to Olympus.
Oh, wow.
And so then there's the story. He does that. He's burned alive. The element of him that is divine goes up to Olympus, where he is judged and met by the gods. And because he's not immortal, they need a workaround for that. He is married off to Hebe, who is the goddess of youth, who is the daughter of Zeus and Hera. And that is a way of making him this immortal god. And this was so his worshippers on Earth in real life could be like, okay, this guy who was a hero, and the stories agree he's a hero, this is why he still is a god. They had a really big problem in that there is a contradiction in no less a source than the Odyssey. In the Odyssey, when Odysseus goes to the underworld and he's describing who he sees, like he sees Medusa, he sees several famous figures, he sees people from his own expedition that died, he sees Heracles. So even in ancient Greece, where there weren't these always agreeing methods or versions of these stories, there was a lot of reverence placed on the works of Homer. So these worshippers of Heracles are like, well, that's tricky that he's specifically stated in the Odyssey as being in the underworld as a dead mortal when we believe he's a god. And so the workaround they came up with is that when he died and he burned himself, the mortal part was all rendered into ash, and his mortal half, the part that came from his mother and not from Zeus, went down to the underworld, where it just had a typical bleak underworld existence. And the parts that came from Zeus ascended to Olympus and lived. So he became this kind of split being, where there was like a Heracles on Olympus and a Heracles in the underworld.
You got a Father, a Son, and a Holy Ghost there.
A bit, but it's interesting too. And like the chronology of these myths is always kind of weird. Like, a god will appear in a story that like, wait, they shouldn't be born yet, and vice versa, and things. But there's really not a lot of myths I could point to of an ascended Heracles. Like, I have gone out of my way to not show him in my books when there's assemblage of the Olympians there, even though the Hera book ends with his apotheosis. It's a good ending to his story. But any of the subsequent stories where the gods are assembled in Olympus, I don't really show Heracles, because I kind of feel like that's probably not the real story. Like, he's probably not there. I have shown him, if you look carefully, he's sometimes lurking in the background, partially obscured in crowd scenes with no attention drawn to him. Because I'm like, that's a nod. He's there, but it's only part of him. He's hidden.
So in ancient Roman culture, if you're immortal, amortal, let me say it. So
it's so hard to say, right? We need to find a better term than that.
There's no option outside of hell for you after death. Is that what I'm hearing? Like the gods, they go to Olympus, which is kind of
the gods are deathless. They cannot die, even if they wanted to. They're just it's not a realm that humans can visit under any circumstances. There's myths where people try to, like Bellerophon rides Pegasus up to Olympus, and Zeus annihilates him with a lightning bolt. Like it's. And the Greeks also speak of it. They also knew, like, you could walk up on top of the real Mount Olympus and it's not there. They kind of speak in terms like there's like, it's another world. It's like Olympus wasn't always that Olympus, but that's just getting down that's a whole other thing. Initially, the idea of the underworld was everybody goes to the underworld, which we typically call Hades after its ruler. And you would cross over the river Styx. Everybody knows that part with Charon. You give him the coin, and you would spend some time in this area called the Fields of Asphodel. Asphodel is I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's a type of plant that was associated with the dead. And eventually, after spending X amount of time there, you would come to another river called Lethe, which was a river of forgetfulness, and you would cross over into that. You would eat drink of this, or just immerse yourself in this water. You'd forget all sense of who you were, and then that was it. And everybody went there, except for there was the Elysian Fields. And Elysian Fields was like for certain mortal people who were given a very specific, but no, not specific. That's the problem. Nobody's really sure how you got there. And the list of people who get to Ascended Elysian Fields was very, very small. And even someone as great as Heracles didn't get there. So it's like, how would you get there? And eventually, as time goes on, different theories of afterlife come about. In my book, Hades, I kind of talk about that, how Persephone, when she joins the underworld as the bride of Hades, she kind of initiates a new way where it's an idea of reincarnation, where you go through the same thing. You surrender your identity at Lethe, but then you come back. And that was a very abbreviated version of, have you all ever heard of the mystery religions?
Yeah.
No.
It's I can't explain a lot of them because they are a mystery, but it was like a big popular form of belief in the Greek afterlife that came about, where you would enter into certain secret rites while you were living on this planet, and they were the mysteries, and we don't know a lot about them because people who were in the mysteries really kept it secret. We know elements, but it was this idea that you would be unlocking new abilities, new treasures, so to speak, in the underworld that would involve you being reborn. And there's certain figures that play a lot into that. Persephone's a central figure, Demeter, her mother, the goddess of grains, Hades, obviously, Dionysus. And there's all these figures who had like these deaths and resurrections, like Persephone and Demeter, like they're all about like the growth cycles. It's a lot. It's pretty cool stuff though. But even that, our vision of that we have is a little sketchy. I'm actually working on a book right now on that idea, like on the early notes. And it's piecing together what we can from like, this has been something people have been fascinating with for thousands of years, but nobody wrote it down back then. Or if they did, that would have been against the basic tenets of the religion. So it's finding the elements that we can.
Let me be nerdy and ask you, what were when you researched this, like, what are your main sources? I mean, I'm sure the Iliad is one of them, and the Odyssey. I'm sure that they're, Hesiod. But what else, other than the comedies and the tragedies? Where do you find the myths?
So yeah, that's actually a great question. Hesiod is my main guy. I will say, well, I have a saying, Hesiod above all others, because I feel like you see certain threads that spread out from like Greek myth that like they tend to follow the Hesiodic model of where the gods came from, how they're related to each other. Like Homer has some stuff that doesn't jive with other people. Like Homer considers Aphrodite to be an actual daughter of Zeus and another goddess who is otherwise unattested called Dione. And I like the version where she's the self-made goddess.
Yeah.
Where she's the severed genitals of Uranos that generates this perfect form for herself and becomes...
Right, she comes out of sea foam, right?
Yeah, and her name literally means born from sea foam, so I'm betting that has some pretty good precedent for it. I tend to use Hesiod. I tend to use, Homer as... it's like you said. My rule is I tend not to use retellings. So with the Greek stuff, it's anything that was written by somebody, either Roman or more often than not than a Greek person, but other people, anyone who believed in these gods or attested to these people or these beings as things that really exist in the world, not later retellings where there's a tendency to gloss on whatever your belief system is over that. I wanted it to be any original source that, like a primary document, so to speak. That being said, there's an infinite amount almost. Not really. I mean, it's a finite thing just by definition. But the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans and other peoples of the era were very good at writing stuff down. And even though not everything survived to us, a hell of a lot did. So there's so much you can just keep digging. And there's just a lot of it, even if it isn't in print now, the internet has like many archives of previous translations of this work. There's a website I like to recommend to people. It's called Theoi, THEOI.com. And it's like just a listing of all the different goddesses and gods and minor deities and beings of Greek mythology. And then it's like a cross-referencing of stories, books, plays, whatever, that you might find references to them in. And that was a really great thing for me to just be like, unfortunately, we're talking about Heracles today. If I recall, they don't actually have a Heracles page because it's just like, it's madness. There's too much. There's too much. The thing, this site it was clearly a work of of scholarship by somebody, and it never quite got finished. It still exists, but it's the amount of material that's out there. It would be a lifetime's work to parse it all out. And I feel like this person spent a good long time in it. And then there's at one point, they're like, I really can't write about every appearance Poseidon ever had. I gotta, do something else.
He's also
hopefully
all the Olympians are a little bit awful. I mean,
that's what I love about them, actually.
Yeah.
I have this thing. I feel like the Olympians, one of the reasons why they have such a hold on us all these years later, when most people don't believe in them anymore, is because I think they are such an interesting abstraction of human nature and specifically the family.
Yeah.
Like they're all powerful for all intents and purposes. But their levels of awful aren't quite as much as powerful as they are. Like, I would still say they're on the good side of things, as terrible as they are. Like, I think like the average person, you give them the power of Olympian, they'd probably be a lot worse. So we can at least say like they're somewhat idealized versions of human nature, of how terrible human nature could be. They're just a little bit better than like what would be, but they're so fun because of that.
Well, they come from two generations of beings that basically tried to kill their descendants, and there's like a co-equal branch called the giants, which are also not exactly on their side, and there's these other mythological creatures that some are friendly with them, some aren't, and they it's like a constant Game of Thrones meets The Sopranos, sort of meets Succession kind of thing,
isn't it? It's amazing that it's Succession, but it's about beings who never fade and never die. So it's like a real force form of Succession. Succession is driven by the fact that Logan Roy is getting older. He's going to die eventually. Zeus never is going to die. Yeah. Zeus is, and so it's like, but it's such a part of the story. So, in the beginning, there's Gaia and Uranos is, he's literally castrated by his sons and daughters, the Titans. Well, his sons, the daughters don't get involved in that part.
Kronos.
And then, Kronos.
With his mother helping him. Her name Rhea or Gaia? I can't remember which.
Gaia. Rhea is his wife. Okay. But it is funny you mention it because there is there's Gaia and Rhea. There's a lot of overlap. It's like you could say Rhea is probably an offshoot of Gaia. And then there's the Titans are the next generation that takes over, and then they give birth. Kronos and Rhea give birth to the Olympians, and the first 6 of them overthrow the Titans. And then there's the 12 Olympians, like you said. It's we like the number 12, so we use it. There was an old altar in the Agora in Athens that was called the Altar of the 12 Great Gods, and I think that's where 12 comes from because they liked it. But there's really no way to count the Olympians and realize there's always at least 13.
Thank you. I've had a problem with it. Which, by the way, there's actually 13 constellations. There should be 13 zodiacs. I mean,
back and especially in ancient Greece, I know there was. Like, I don't know. To go back to your idea, I've never heard the idea that the 12 labors are. I feel like you could probably make that work, but I feel like there'd probably have to be some stretching.
Well, the person I heard say at work, first of all, they were a narrator on an audible book, but they just said it as a statement of fact. They did not, just because there were 12. But I mean. There's a lot of symmetry, but I love comparative mythology. So, first of all, the whole soap opera thing, but, there's always sort of the Zeus, there's the Sky Father, that's the lightning and thunder god, sort of war and fertility, and, kills a python at some point or a dragon at some point. There's you have the underworld that sort of like a malaise, which goes back to the old Jewish underworld, called Shul or Sheol, which is it's not heaven or hell. It's just you're sort of in a fugue state. You have the Fields of Elysium, which is sort of like a super exclusive Valhalla. All these things borrow from each other, and like I've even read things where Aphrodite was imported because there was goddesses like Inanna, Astarte, and Ishtar, which are probably the same, were so popular that the Greeks we gotta bring her into our story also to have one of those.
I mean, most of the gods of the Greeks are imported. You may have heard the expression Apollo is the most Greek god because he's the one that kind of that's why he also doesn't have a Roman name. They just took Greek Apollo. He wasn't a god that existed there already. Apollo is the one that's that's super Greek. But all the other gods, you could find antecedents of them around the world. Even Apollo, honestly, the whole concept of the divine archer and the sacred twins, you see that everywhere. But Apollo's specific nature is super duper Greek. And the other ones, they all come from Aphrodite. It is interesting you mention her, though, because the ancients did view her as an outsider in a way.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons I like that she's the one that's not a blood relation to Zeus. She always she has an air of the foreign to her. She came out of the East. She marries into the family, and she's always had that air about her. And it's one of the reasons she's one of my favorites. I like that idea of the person who has to marry into this crazy family, but holds her own completely.
Yeah, and I mean, she has a sperm relation to him, but not a blood relation to him. And one of the things I did not realize about the Greek myths, and it's really takes a forefront in the tales of Heracles, is how around the world the Greek pantheon traveled. I mean, the Egyptians a little bit, but most religions, so it seems, or at least my understanding, which may be very limited, was really regionalized. But the Greeks, things happened in Anatolia, which is Turkey. Things happened in Libya. Things happened in Kush, which is Sudan, or maybe it's Ethiopia, depending on who you're talking to. Things happened up in Macedonia, in Thrace, and they got around. I think there was even something in the Fleece is, I think, in what is modern day Jordan, it's like a Black Sea.
Yeah, it's normally or I've heard it even further north than that in places the Fleece is always located in parts right beyond the world that they explored, and so the goal points for where the Fleece was kept at some points was shifted.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, it's the Greeks and the Romans who, some people make a stronger distinction between the two. I don't. The Romans fully co-opt. They had different names for the gods because earlier on it's the same being, but they had their own character. But as time went on, the Romans became so enamored of Greek culture, and when they had taken over the Greeks, they just fully co-opted the mythology of the Greeks. So it's definitely the same realm of belief that they're dealing with, but the scope of the world for those cultures was so big that the scope of their stories was accordingly large. Like you're saying with regional stuff, a lot of times you were the area of the world that you encountered was kind of fenced in by either natural landmarks or lack of technology or neighbors who were bigger and stronger. You have with the Greeks and the Romans, an era of exploration and other related cultures that was wide spanning. They had pretty good knowledge of 3 continents. There's a lot that happens in Asia and Africa in addition to Europe and those things, all the Mediterranean. There's hints of things beyond that, which I don't think is early accounts of the Americas or Australia stuff. I think it's just coincidence if it does happen to sound like that, but their world was much bigger.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of words are also Greek. So Australia is Southland in Greek. So
yeah, and actually, as I said, Australia, they might have known about Australia. I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Well, let's just say the gods did because they knew everything. What's up, Say?
But I'm really curious about the astrology thing, and I wanted to know if we had to speculate. Specifically, George, if you had to speculate, because you're the most knowledgeable about the subject. Outside of maybe Cancer, which I know that has something to do with Hera in a way.
What answer is?
I want to play this game this way. So I want to get to. So Hercules is given these 12 tasks to by his king. That's sort of his cousin-in-law, whatever. But partly to pay penance. And so his first task is to take on the Nemean lion. Nemea, I think, is in. It's somewhere in Jordanish or something, but I mean, I'm not sure where Nemea is. George probably does, but I mean, that's obvious. That's Leo. That's going through Leo. Do you know where Nemea is?
I don't actually. I know it's general Mediterranean, but I don't know if I don't know it's by Jordan, but could be.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I should have known that.
It's okay. So the next one is he has to take on Hydra and like these killer crabs are bothering him. His nephew is with them. I think the one who was dramatized in the Kevin Sorbo Hercules show.
Yeah, that's Aeolus. Yeah, and the crab is Cancer. The crab is said to be. It's not in most retellings, but in order to make this work, there is a crab that Hera sends out that grabs at Heracles' ankle as he's fighting the Hydra. And it's like a kind of side thing. While he's already fighting this creature that is super venomous, and every time he knocks off one of its heads, two more grow in its place. And while this is happening, there's a big crab that's just immobilized his one foot. So
right, but he figures out that, or his cousin figures out, or a stepbrother, whatever this kid is,
his nephew. Yeah, Aeolus is the one who saves the day. In that time, he burns the stumps and saves the day.
If you burn the stumps with fire, if you cauterize the wounds, the heads won't grow back. So I had down that this could be Cancer, Scorpio, or Draco because of the Hydra. But it sounds like you're putting this one at Cancer, at least for now.
Well, because Scorpio is actually, that's pretty categorically a story that doesn't have anything to do with Heracles. Scorpio is actually to do with Orion the Hunter. Orion the Hunter is, we all know him because of Orion's belt, and he is a very old character from antiquity. He is an old hero, just like Heracles. He does less of a good job of ascribing other heroic deeds to him, and unfortunately, a lot of his stories are kind of lost. But what we do know is he is normally looking to impress Artemis, who is a sworn virgin goddess, and she's like, "I have no use for dudes," and he doesn't take no for an answer. For whatever reason, either she or her mother or Apollo decide they have to kill him. And the way that they kill him is sending a giant scorpion against him. This is one of the ways. He's killed in many different ways. When I told this story, I did it because I am a fan of the multiple choices of myths. It's like kind of like a lot of stuff happens at once. Like he's fighting this giant scorpion, all it happens. So Scorpio is pretty clearly that one. And Heracles has nothing to do with that. So
all right, well,
that was out already.
So then
however, here's my question. I know the astrological symbols, as we know it, do have their roots in Greece, but I wonder how much they've evolved over the years. I feel like in order to really categorically answer this, we'd have to find like what the earliest symbols of these were too, because I could see like the meanings changing over time.
It's entirely possible. I'm not even sure they have their origins in Greece. They might be Sumeria, Babylon, or
I'm sure. Yeah, that's also. I'm sure they're older than that too. Yeah.
So funny thing is there's a zodiac that's in Mesoamerica, which obviously has very little connection to Greece. Somewhere down the line they did anyway. But the Scorpio is a constellation that's the only one that's identical in both, which is pretty cool because I'm a Scorpio. So,
hey, me too. What's your birthday?
11/11.
Oh, I'm November 5th, Guy Fawkes Day.
Oh, wow. My boyfriend's a Scorpio.
The Scorpio power is rich here, everybody.
Yeah, well, now you have to share his birthday.
Oh, well, it's 11/12.
Okay, day after me.
I thought you didn't say because you didn't know, and I didn't want to put you on blast.
Oh, I don't care about that.
He's my boyfriend. We've only dated 1 year. I'm not really sure yet.
Save enough you have to save it for 2 presents now. Oh my goodness. All right. Mm-hmm. So then there's the boar with his holy hind. So I took a shot at this one because it's a boar and Sagittarius is usually hunting a boar. I called this one Sagittarius, but I put a giant question mark next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like the Sagittarius is probably like a reference to Charon, who does have connections sometimes to Heracles, but
yeah, I'm not sure. So and then he has to clean the stables, and there's cows. I'm not really sure, but he also diverted a river to do it. So I'm thinking maybe Aquarius.
Okay, I can maybe see that.
Okay,
I'm just gonna say if I'm whatever astrological symbol, I don't want to be associated with the Aegean stables. That's literally a story where he takes water to clean out like tons of cow poop.
Yeah.
Is that what you want? You're like your like Scorpio's cool. We're killing a mighty hunter. You were water to clean out dung.
Look at it as changing the course of nature, though that doesn't speak well for the Aquarius part of it. It does for the strong man throwing rocks in there, making a dam. All right.
Yeah.
So then there's giant vultures that he sort of lulls to sleep with music. I think Virgo is usually with a harp.
So normally the giant vulture thing, it's normally the Stymphalian birds, who are birds that are sacred to Ares that live around Lake Stymphalos, and they have brazen feathers, like they're metal.
Yeah.
And they eat human flesh, and as they fly, the feathers fall down and like rain like arrows.
Yeah, like what the vulture
normally
shoots at Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's exactly Adrian Tubes the vulture. Yeah, so that's normally the myth that is the vulture being. All I'm remembering of a vulture being lulled by music is from the Harryhausen film Clash of the Titans.
Well,
I don't think that's an accurate one for.
No, that wasn't my source. My source, though, was probably not much better. It was a hour-long cartoon on YouTube of the 12 Labors of Hercules. So it probably is those birds you're talking about.
Oh, I bet you they probably didn't want to show the wholesale slaughter of thousands of birds.
Yeah, and I probably just translated what they drew into giant vultures because I didn't know what else to call them. They could have been pterodactyls for all I know. All right. So then we have the Bull of Crete. So obviously Crete's in it's an island in the Mediterranean, but that one seems to be very obviously Taurus.
That being said, my understanding is Taurus is Io. The former love of Zeus, who was transformed into a cow, who then and she was the founder of Egypt, and she's got a lot of important mythological connections.
Oh, I'm not ruling out any of that. I'm just saying as he travels through the zodiac.
Yeah.
I mean, things have, there's about.
Well, that's interesting. So it might not be that these myths you're saying are the roots of these. This is more like these stories were patterned off of the existing zodiac, and they were trying to like use that as a basis for.
Yeah. Now remember, my source for this is a book that tried to condense all of the esoteric wisdom and all of the mystery schools sort of by epochs, times, but it's not all in the same chronological order.
Yeah.
The author groups things together in a way that author feels that the mystery schools tried to make sense of them. So insert Rosicrucians or Hermetics or cult of Isis, whatever you like. Could be the cult of Dionysus, whatever cult you want in there, the Monarchians, whoever. All right. So the mares of Diomedes, as I understand it, there's two of them, and so with that, I sort of went with Gemini, that they're twins, maybe.
Is there any astrology symbol that has horses that we're forgetting?
Sagittarius is a centaur.
The mares of Diomedes. I haven't heard that there's necessarily two, but they are man-eating horses of Diomedes, and Heracles throws Diomedes to the horses, and after they eat him, they're cured of their I guess they're not cannibals, but they're carnivorous ways.
Yeah, they're carnivorous horses. They're not eating other horses, at least as far as we know.
I mean, who knows what they do in their days off?
Exactly right. Fair point. That's why you're the artist, creative drawer guy. I'm just
artist, creative drawer guy. That's gonna be my new bio.
That's
absolutely artist, creative drawing guy. You're what? Thank you.
The sad thing is, in my real life, I'm supposed to know words. Okay. So the next one is he gets Hippolyta's girdle, and Hippolyta, famously Wonder Woman's mother, the queen of the Amazons. They go into Scythia for this, or Scythia, which is sort of between the Black and the Caspian Seas. So they go pretty far on that one. And Hercules pulls an Odysseus here, and he basically seduces her, and woos it off of her, and then does a Ric Flair woo and walks on off with the girdle.
Wow, I wasn't expecting Ric Flair to come up.
Yeah, no,
what does that match on to?
The girdle, maybe. I mean, she's not a virgin. Maybe Libra. She's sort of the guardian of justice. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. I can't really figure this out. And obviously not obviously, that's the whole point of the occult and the arcane, is that it's not obvious, it's hidden. And with the mystery schools, it's supposed to be mystery, and with the secret schools, it's supposed to be secrets. But I can't figure out all of the things associated with all of the zodiac signs that fit here. So I was hoping between the best we could. Then there's a sea monster. I mean, that could obviously be Pisces. It could be Cetus if we want to have the 13th zodiac sign. I'm a big fan of Cetus because Cetus. I'm actually a bigger fan of the one I can't pronounce, of the snake, the healer. It's like Ocalius or something.
So you have the 10th labor as a sea monster. What's that sea monster's name?
That's a terrific question.
Because I normally have it as a guy called Geryonis, who had one head and 3 bodies. I've never heard him categorized as a sea monster, but he might be. I normally see him referred to as a humanoid thing.
Okay, listen, you're the expert in this. So remember, I'm going by a cartoon I saw on YouTube. So I mean, it's very good. I like the animation, but I'm not sure. Yeah, and of course I see sea monster. I'm like, ooh, Leviathan, and ooh, Typhon. Yeah. Ooh, the river dragon, the water dragon from every myth ever that we can go back 10,000 years on. So of course I bought into that right away. Okay, so maybe
who does that match up to? Sea monster, is that Pisces?
If it's not Aquarius, it has to be Pisces.
Yeah, it could be Pisces. Sure.
And where does Aries, Aries, fit into this?
Well, I suppose that could be the boar, but that's a ram, which really is totally different things.
The Aries, he's actually specifically, that is Pan. Or Aegipan, as it's called when it's what Pan is the Greek god who's half man, half goat. When he is Aegipan, his top half becomes goat and his bottom half becomes fish.
Ooh. Well, I've been told that all of the Greek, like Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon originally were pictured as fishmen, basically mermen, which also matches like an Eastern god, Dagon, and who also looks like the fishmen described by the Dogon tribe in Africa, which is all interesting stuff. But that's not okay. And then there's the cattle of Geryon,
that's the one I was just mentioning. Yeah, Geryon.
And I have no idea what this one would be with other assorted monsters. So I don't know which sign of the zodiac that could possibly be.
So Geryonis is the guy I was just talking about, the 1 head, 3 bodies. So I guess the sea monster is probably Ladon the dragon. Ladon the dragon is the creature who's curled around in the Garden of Hesperides, the apples that he has to get. Ladon is a dragon that never sleeps, that curls around that. It's he's like a sibling of like the Sphinx and Cerberus and various other creatures of Typhon and Echidna. So maybe that was the sea monster.
He could be Draco in addition to Pisces.
I think he probably is Draco. If that would be it.
That's the labor with Atlas, right?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And normally Atlas is, because like the Garden of Hesperides is like Hera's most sacred place, and it's not a place you can easily go into, but the attendants of that garden were the daughters of Atlas, so he was able to go in there. So that's when Heracles takes over to hold up the atmosphere, the vault of heaven, and Atlas goes, and then he tricks him like Bugs Bunny style when he comes back. Like,
yeah,
because Atlas is like, I'm just not going to pick up the earth again. He's like, oh, well, just for a second, I just need to make a cushion for my shoulders. And Atlas is like, duh, okay. And then,
which way did he go? Which way did he go? I like Hercules because he's so big and strong. I know, Atlas, I like you because you're so big and strong. That was sort of a dopey titans. I guess the kids do exceed the parents. We have the golden apple of Hesperides, we have Prometheus and a giant eagle. I don't really know, where does Hercules fit in with the Prometheus and eagle story?
So that's not normally one of his labors, but in later versions where people decided it was pretty sucked that Prometheus spends all of eternity being tortured, there is, this is very late in antiquity. They make stories where Heracles comes and kills the eagle that has been sent by Zeus to continuously pick out Prometheus's regenerating liver. Mm-hmm. That's a later thing. And it's definitely not part of his canonical 12.
Zeus is so mean and Prometheus is so patient. All he did was give them fire, for God's sake. I mean, it just broke a rule, I guess. All right, then Hercules at some point goes to the realm of the dead, and I guess that's something with Cerberus?
Yeah, he has to bring Cerberus back.
Okay, does he get
that one's great because like it's a classic. What would that be? Is there a dog?
There's a 3-headed dog, or is that the one?
Cerberus is a 3-headed dog, but I'm trying. Like, what's the astrological?
No, there's no dog.
I mean, there's Canis Minor and Canis.
There is Cain,
but those are on zodiac signs. So I don't know.
Well, that's always a fun myth because it is part of the hero's journey to make the trip to the underworld. That's been like, that's like, we all know that one now. And this is like his big story. He goes down to the underworld and like, this is Heracles defeating death. But like the version of the story that's pretty funny about it is like, he just goes down there and it's like, hey, can I borrow your dog? And Hades like, sure. Like it's actually a pretty chill interaction. When I dramatized it, like, he's an old man at this point. He's been struggling for years, and every step of the way, Cerberus drags against him. So he's like dragging this giant elephant-sized dog monster behind him, and like it's a huge thing. But like, the stories are normally like Hades is like, yeah, you can take my dog, just bring him back. He loves belly rubs. He gets fed 3 times a day.
9 times a day.
Oh, wait, actually, good point. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's only one stomach. I don't know. I mean, but anyway.
I figure 3 heads going into one stomach and hopefully just 1 exhaust port. Yeah.
You went full Old Man Logan in your version of Heracles, though. So, so at some point, Heracles invaded Troy. We talked about that already.
Yep.
I sort of mentioned earlier on these sort of like the traveling hero that stumbles into trouble, sort of like I wrote down A-Team Equalizer style. Incredible Hulk style, the old Incredible Hulk.
Oh my gosh. And at the end, he just walks down the road all sad and like plays me. I mean, that's kind of it makes sense. That they would have made the Hercules series. I was never a fan of it. Mm-hmm. The Kevin Sorbo. I did love Xena, but that's because Lucy Lawless was, I like Lucy Lawless.
We all know.
But everyone understands why.
Yeah.
The Hercules one, I was like, they really couldn't have cast an actor who less embodied the embodiment of what Heracles/Hercules should be. But like the endless adventures that he is a magnet for trouble. Like he is the uber hero. He is the hero. And like it just makes sense that like he would be perfect for an ongoing series.
Yeah, and he's the original Jack Reacher.
Wait, Jack Reacher's your go-to for big hero?
Right.
I'm just trying to be modern. Trying to
get those kid listeners. Hey, kids, Jack Reacher. He's got Riz, right?
I mean, I use C to get to the youth.
I don't watch that one, so I don't.
Neither do I. So, all right. So, what I was thinking about earlier on when you're talking about how the new wife, he found a new wife and who got tricked into poisoning Heracles to stop his cheating. She's listening to a centaur and like she's using her hoofed animals. I mean, it's the goats. It's the goats and the bulls that are fertile, not the horses.
I think you lost me there a little bit.
Pan is a goat, Saturn.
It's true, yeah.
Baal is the goat, the Israelites with the goat. It's always the goat god that is the fertility one, that's the goats and bulls.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ones. Horses are never really associated with.
Well, just don't listen to centaurs. They're kind of bad news.
That's the point. Like she was there's silly lady.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have cheated on his wife. Let's not.
Yeah, let's.
Well, he hadn't
She's
yet.
a smart woman.
He hadn't.
There's a line I use throughout the Olympian series, often in reference to Zeus, where when Zeus does something that's particularly horrendous, there'll be a panel of him with like just stars in his eyes. Oh. And I say Zeus has too much of his father in him, because Zeus has a lot of things in common with his father Kronos. Kronos has a lot in common with his father Uranos, who was literally the sky. And Uranos' main feature was that he had jet black skin and had diamonds all over him. So, which was the stars. Mm-hmm. And you see this kind of bad behavior coming up generation after generation. And one of the things that I ascribe to, one of the reasons why Heracles seems to have the particular ire of Hera instead of the other thousands of children Zeus had, is Heracles personality-wise is the closest to Zeus. So he's got a lot in common. The stuff we were talking about up front, where he's a bit of an asshole sometimes. He's definitely, he got the cheating side. He's got like the good traits of Zeus too. He's very strong, very brave. Can be noble in the traditional sense. Like he could be regal, I'll say. Like he's not always altruistic, but he can often do things that are considered quite heroic. But he has all the bad sides of Zeus too. Like he is, personality-wise, the one that matches up most to his father, even among the more divine children, the like pure blood, like the pure Olympians. I'd say Heracles' personality is the closest to Zeus.
Well, you would definitely know because you're the one. So I like to think that at his pyre death that he had full apotheosis, and this marriage with the goddess of youth was symbolic of Hera forgiving him and them being as happy a family as the Olympians could be.
That's spoilers from my book Hera. That's kind of how it is. Not the entire book, but the main part with Heracles is Hera. I very much take it he is the glory of Hera. He is a very powerful man, physically powerful, who would not have been on the path for being the greatest hero in mythology if it hadn't been for the fires that Hera put him through. And I like her not as someone who's just like this, like his cheerleader. She recognizes, she's like, this guy has a lot of my husband in him. There's a lot of love about Zeus, but he's a problem too. I want to make this guy live a life where he has to be the best he could be. And so that's the moment. Like, it's when he comes up to heaven or to Olympus. And it's very telling in the way I draw this too. You see Hera is seated at the throne with Zeus standing behind her. The oldest depictions of art, that's always the way it is. You always see Hera sitting with Zeus behind. They actually think Hera was probably the original main goddess, and Zeus comes on as a consort who eventually, over time, becomes the divine being that supplants her. Well, or at least is her partner. But older depictions, Hera seated, Zeus stands behind her on the throne. And so that's Heracles comes up, sees his dad for the first time, sees this woman who put him through these fires that purified him, so to speak, and he's finally allowed within Olympus.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because, first of all, the women were the priest class for most of antiquity and prehistory. That's sort of where the whole witch comes from, because they dealt with medicine and herbs and things like that. But it's believed anyway that a lot of the tribes that ultimately settled Anatolia and Iran and the Middle East and into Greece did have a matriarchy, but at some point, not exactly, when we went to agrarian, but sort of in that transition that sort of a male hero sort of took over. And so that would be consistent that Hera was in the forefront and Zeus is behind her. Anyway.
Especially if you have a god as something who is a creator, who brings life. If you look at the two sexes, it's not men who do that.
Right.
So it makes sense that the way the Greeks, the initial god, the goddess is Gaia, literally the earth. It makes sense that you have as the generative force, the initial head you have as the women. I suspect it's something akin to like the Iroquois people of like what is now the Northeast of, the Americas. They had a society where within the enclosure, within their villages, whatever, women were in charge. And on the dealings outside, men were in charge. I feel like it was women were in charge of like the home, the base, whatever. And then they would have men go, if men were encountering other people, like that was who was in charge. I feel like probably societies go through a very similar thing of that a lot. And eventually we have it come into where it's the traditional patriarchal. It's the danger, like you see it in ancient Rome. You have an armed class going out there encountering people, and then what happens when they cross over the Rubicon? You're like, oh, we have a crisis here. Eventually, the people that are sent out to be the people dealing with the outside threats can kind of usurp power back home. I think that's probably something that you saw in the ancient worlds, almost in every situation.
Right. And who's watching the watchers? The gods. But when the king of the gods usurps the queen of the gods, or the grandson of the king and queen of the gods usurps the king of the gods, and it becomes a sacred patriarchy as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was deep.
It was. We got real deep on this one.
Yeah. George, I know that we said we were going to do Hercules and Hermes, but I'm looking at the clock, and I think we've been talking for more than an hour, and I think that is way.
And I got to bounce soon, actually. So I had a feeling that here's the thing. Like, you've heard me speak now. This is something we didn't even talk about my new series, Asgardians, where I'm doing Norse mythology. Greek mythology has been my the thing that made me love learning when I was first introduced to it, in third or fourth grade. And it has been something I've based most of my career on. It is my favorite thing to discuss. So you're discovering I have a nearly endless amount of things to just spout. And I feel bad. I feel like I did a lot of talking. I wanted to hear more of what you all had to say, but maybe we could do another episode someday. I'll invite myself on.
No, I would love to have you as a regular and talk about more Olympians and Asgardians, and maybe even C will join us for those as well. And I want you to be
maybe C and I can actually usurp control from you at some point and just depose you.
It's all been a big ploy to get you out of here.
There's a reason I keep talking about generations succeeding generations.
I have offered you this show many times, Sam. All you have to do is ask.
But actually, I do have one question for you, George, before you go. You know that, of course, Disney was how I was introduced to Hercules. So there's talks. Disney.
Heracles.
Oh,
no, Disney's definitely Hercules, though.
Okay.
Thank you. So when it's been speculated, I'm not sure if it's confirmed or just been speculated that they will be making a live action version of Hercules.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's, through the grapevine. So I wanted to know, being that the cartoon kind of deviated a little bit from the story of Hercules, what would you want to see from Hercules' story in the live action, if you could choose?
So there was a movie they did a few years back that I didn't actually see, but I thought the casting was perfect. They cast Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as Heracles, or Hercules. I think he was actually, maybe he was called Heracles in it. I think he's perfect for that. One of the things to keep in mind, Heracles' mother, the one who had a little bit of Perseus in her, Perseus was a princess of Ethiopia. So one thing I feel very strongly, Heracles should not be like the guy he looks like in Disney, where he's this white boy with red hair. I think he should be a guy who has some color to him. I don't want to be wrapped up in appearances. Dude should be burly with a beard. He should be kind of rough and tumble looking. And I'd want to see a Hercules / Heracles who had a little bit of the moral ambiguity that is in the original one. The Disney version is essentially the story of Superman. He's a perfect person born in another planet where they have special abilities. He's sent to Earth. He's found by a couple of farmers who raise.
You heard the show with George O'Connor and C end rather abruptly, and that's because I lost my internet. And by the time I got it back up and running and was able to send a new link, George had to go. But he's going to be on again. And you can, I don't have all of his plugs, but I can tell you that you can find the Olympians, and I'm sure you can buy them individually, but you can get box sets, books 1 through 6, and box set books 7 through 12 through Macmillan, which is us.macmillan, MACMILLAN.com. If you just Google that, or just Google the Olympians and George O'Connor, which is letter O, apostrophe, capital CONNOR, you'll find it pretty easily. And he's also working on the Asgardians as well. And so, like I said, he's agreed to come on, and hopefully we'll have better luck with the internet next time. So I apologize to George and C for sort of the abrupt ending and not allowing them to plug their own stuff. C does have a business. It's called Superior Assist. So you can look her up if you're looking for some logistical assistance and administrative assistance to help you out. I'm doing a really bad job of plugging. Let me just read George's little bio here that's on Macmillan. It says, George O'Connor is the New York Times bestselling author of Olympians, the series of graphic novels featuring the tragic, dramatic, and epic lives of the Greek pantheon. So there you go. So it's it's all there. Actually, there is the Greek and its counterpart featuring the Norse Guards, the series Asgardians. His first graphic novel, Journey into Mohawk Country, pushed the boundaries of the genre, using as its sole text the actual historical journal of the 17th-century Dutch trader Harmen Meyndertsz van den Bogaert. I am sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. He also illustrated acclaimed playwright Adam Rapp's Ball Peen Hammer. He teamed up with writer Daniel G. Newman on Unrig, How to Fix Our Broken Democracy, the first volume in the World Citizen comic series. George is also the creator of popular picture books such as the New York Times best-selling Kapow and If I Had a Triceratops. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. So that's some on George. Again, apologies to everyone, but you'll hear him again. And we'll pick up where we left off, maybe with Hermes. And the reason I'm interested in Hermes is because Hermes, Mercury, the connection with Odin. Why is Wednesday Hercules and Woden's Day? And the connections to Thoth or Osiris, all of the above. And, I'm always in a million different places. And maybe if we learn the truest distillation of the myths, maybe we can figure out the connections there as well, and figure out if there's some more distinctions between Hermes and Mercury than there's between Heracles and Hercules. Anyway, thanks for listening. And I like to ask the guest for what song, but the guest isn't here, but it's definitely not going to be a theme to the Kevin Sorbo Hercules series. So anyway, thanks very much. Sorry for the technical glitch, but you'll hear from us next time in Garden of Doom.
Hercules, hero of song and story, Hercules, winner of ancient glory, fighting for the right, fighting with his might, with the strength of 10 ordinary men. Hercules, people are safe when near him. Hercules, only the evil fear him. Softness in his eyes, iron in his thighs, virtue in his heart, fire in every part of the mighty Hercules.